All right, everybody, welcome back. This is lesson number 3. What I've done is you've already seen, obviously, the first part of this base. What I've done is just taken the rest of this, like, behind everything and just made a big platform. And what we're going to learn today is how to do courtyards. And we're going to do a little bit of decorating as well. So all I've done is I've taken where this trade terminal is and I've added an extra expansion, and then I just added a second doorway here so I can kind of just run straight through it, and it would bring us right out into this large courtyard. Obviously, if I come back through here, it brings me right into this alleyway that brings me to the deck and all of the other functionality stuff that we built beforehand. Now, as I addressed before, like, this stairway here was just kind of for an example purpose, but it does kind of cut us off from accessing the courtyard from that direction. So what I'm going to actually do, I guess, is just put a couple doorways on. So if I do want to cut through, I can just make my way through that way. Obviously, none of that stuff is, necessary. You can, again, hopefully you're designing your freighter base how you want it, not how I'm teaching you to do it. So with this courtyard grid here, I think I'm going to actually take bits and pieces out of it so I can build stairways. I like to be somewhat symmetrical with it. So if you pull 2 pieces out, you can fit a stairway there. And I'll color it purple just to stay with the theme. And we'll go up from there. I'm not sure what we're going to do with the second floor, but at least now you have this kind of cool little, it helps the aesthetic of this interior exterior courtyard. Another thing I really like to do is get a big centerpiece for the courtyard. And, I mean, it could really be anything that you want it to be. But I tend to like this planetary globe a lot. And, I did use it earlier, but it's a really cool piece to have when you blow it up. It has kind of this glowing effect. I think it looks really nice in the middle. And again, when you color that piece, it really doesn't do anything to it. So I guess that doesn't really matter. But this is kind of a cool piece to have in the middle. Now, you can really have any piece that you want, that you're really like a big fan of. You can just throw it in the middle. Preferably something that's big that you can enlarge. I don't have much unlocked because I'm in creative mode here, but you could get something cool from the anomaly that you could blow up and use. Another thing I really like to use are the signs. So once we get into some decorating, we'll start putting some of those up as well. But you can kind of place these in weird spots like this. And maybe that'll be like, I don't know, nobody really knows what that says. So we'll pretend it says trade terminal. So if we're going to talk about decorating and things like that, the best building I could possibly think of to do something like that would be a personal quarters. So what I'm going to do is build a building that would be sort of, I don't know, you just want to use technology rooms. I think if you don't have the legacy parts, which you might have seen in my main build because I do have those, but obviously with newer saves, you're not going to have those legacy pieces, so you do have to use technology rooms to sort of be basic rooms. And I'll go kind of deep with it, I guess. It doesn't have to quite be this big. You can always do second floors or whatever you want. But just for the purpose of this, I'll do a single floor living quarters. And then we'll do a doorway right in the middle. Do the black and red is cool. And then, I don't know, I don't always love windows on the front if it's a personal quarters like this. So maybe I'll just do them around the sides. That's all going to have to be, maybe I'll do it on the inside when I get in there. Another real quick side lesson I want to show you. You can actually, when you're in your build camera and you're floating around like this, so say I did want to actually put all these windows on the building from the outside. If I go to where the border of this is and I see this grid, my camera doesn't want to move any farther. But if I double click the left stick on my controller, it'll actually reset that building camera to where you were, and now you have a whole new space, so you can go even farther away, and now your border's in a different spot. So that allows you to actually, you know, have a little bit of extra flexibility when it comes to using the building camera. If you don't want to go back to your character and then open it up again, it really is pretty helpful in certain situations. So consider using that. It's probably something I should have told you earlier, but it's really nice to have. At least you know it, and at least I didn't forget that. Another cool thing you can do is you can take these flat panels, and if you have like a piece that you really like to display, a decal or something like that, you can take these flat panels and actually kind of like lay them up against something like this, or maybe right here. Kind of center it as well as you can. And then if you want it black, you can do the black and yellow, or you can do gray, or just kind of find a color that you really like. I like to do the black, and then I just kind of scale it down or scale it up or whatever. Kind of get it as center as I can, like this. And then I can take these decals here and place a decal on it, and it looks really nice that way. So I can just kind of have a little, you know, icon. I don't really like building in third person because I'm kind of in the way. But if I take this decal, center it up a little bit, that looks cool. And then sometimes I like to throw the wall lights on there as well, just to kind of light it up. Center those as good as I can. I probably could do a better job, but it looks kind of cool either way. Another cool thing we can do with these signs, and I've used this technique a few times, and I believe I can do it now because I think, yeah, I have the parts. So I'm going to take this and put it in free placement by pushing down on the D-pad, and that allows me to just put my items obviously anywhere, rather than having to snap them into other pieces. But what's nice about this is you can just kind of make up where you want things to go. So what I'm going to do is use the right stick to change the axis that it's going to rotate on, and then I'm going to rotate it with my bumpers. So I'm going to turn it sideways, and I want it to be kind of as level as it can be. And then I'm going to change the axis again so I can rotate it this way. And what I'm also going to do is probably rotate it so it's kind of on an angle like this, because I want it kind of shining at the sign itself. So now this is going to be difficult to place, so you might have to play around with it a little bit. But if you kind of want it like this so that you can see the light source, and you kind of want the light to be on the sign itself. So maybe if I try right here, stand back a little bit. Yeah, that's not where exactly I wanted it, but sometimes it can be difficult to place these things. You really kind of want it on the sign. And this is much easier if you have like a 2-floored building, because you can kind of place it on the building above it. And it also depends on where your flat panel is. But this is a kind of a cool concept, and I'll show you in the next lesson the way my sign looks. It's very similar to this, but you will see it in the next lesson, or you've probably already seen it if you've seen my latest tour with no commentary of my freighter base. But that's the general idea. If you can find a good spot for it, it gives you really cool light to kind of light up this flat panel. And you can do that again on the other side. So I can just copy this, and I guess I'll see if I can find the right axis to rotate it like this. And then I'll just kind of try and stick it up here, try and even it out somewhat. And obviously that's kind of a crude job, but it gives the sign this kind of really cool accent lighting from a distance. And obviously, if you go back far enough, the game will kind of stop trying to render that light. And I think the further back you can go kind of depends on how many objects are on the screen. But right now I can still see it pretty good. So that's cool. Once you start building a little too much, it'll probably shut that off just to save your resources. But kind of a cool idea with these signs. I like to use this lamppost because it gives you really cool lighting. And not only for that, but also just like around the base. Gives you a really neat kind of warm light effect. So they're nice to have. So we'll go inside. And now we have a giant room here. Basically just a canvas we can do whatever we want with. And that's really nice because we can build these interior walls and windows, and we can use those to separate different rooms in this entire building here. Now, this is kind of a glitch building thing, but you see how it's red and it doesn't want me to do this? That's because I'm actually at the end of the grid. I'm really outside of the build limits, as it says right there. But what you can do is you can kind of work your way into that to get it to work. There are ways. See how it kind of flashes green when I go from a spot that I can build into a spot where I can't. But what you want to do is quickly move your cursor over from the green into the spot that you can't build. And so basically what you're doing is pulling your trigger as fast as you can and moving the piece so that when it flashes green, you're placing it. And obviously it's going to take you a few tries to get it to work. But you can do that with a number of pieces. You can do that with building parts, like you can do like actual buildings. So you can technically build outside of the grid, but for this case I'm just building something like the windows. So it's kind of a glitch building technique, but it's also not really that cheap because you're really just putting windows on the thing. I'll show you in a second how you can do that with buildings, just for the sake of showing it to you. Hopefully this works because it doesn't always work. So what you want to do is, say I want to build outside of the build area, you can do the same thing. And it doesn't seem to want to let me. See how it's flashing green like that really quickly? So I'm just going to pull the trigger and move it until it hits that spot. So now this room right here is actually outside of the building limit. It's actually off of the deck. So I'm not even really supposed to have that room there. So yes, you can build outside the building limits. So now I'll come through here. I'll get rid of this window that I already had placed. Now I have this room right here that's actually outside of the freighter build grid, and it actually glitched me right out. So I ended up having to actually go aboard my Corvette and beam back aboard the freighter. And that's because what happened was it shot me into space and it de-rendered my freighter base and rendered the Corvette as if I was like spacewalking all of a sudden. So yeah, you can do this, and obviously there's going to be risks, and you also can't like build things inside of the room because you're out of range. So I mean, but if I come like this and I am inside of the freighter base range, it will let me place this part, but you can't build on like that half of the room. And I really don't want to walk back over there again into this room, but it's just a cool thing to think about, I guess. If you do want it to like aesthetically be outside of the grid, and there are some things you can do with it. I don't usually build rooms outside of the grid, but again, you can build windows outside of the grid, and that doesn't really hurt anything. So I'm gonna have to do that again. Hopefully I can quickly build one of those. Yeah, they're just kind of a pain to do. You can see it kind of turning green there. So there it is. Again, yes, you can build things outside the build area, but it doesn't come without risk. So I've deleted that room and I've put windows back on here. So now what I want to do is actually decide what I want to do with these personal quarters. I think the best move is to say like, okay, where do I want the bedroom? Where do I want the kitchen? Where do I want things like that? If I do a bedroom, I'm going to actually put it over in this corner. I want it to be about that big, so I'll go ahead and block it off like this, maybe that. So I've got walls now, and I will color them to be matching. Now I'm going to turn one into a doorway actually, and I'll turn this one into a door. So now in here I just have an actual separate room, and if I also want to, I can turn these walls into windows, but it's a bedroom, so I'm gonna try and like keep it that way. And then if I'm gonna, you know, do things like decorating, obviously this is all, you can do whatever you want with this kind of stuff. I like to do a bed maybe this way. I'll do it, you know what, let's go this corner. And what I usually do is double up the bed, because I feel like the single bed is kind of small. I like to get things as kind of aligned as well as I can, just so it looks like it's meant to be one piece. And then with these walls, since they're already just walls and they're blocked off, I'll put like this station billboard on it, and what I like to do is blow that up, and it kind of acts as a television. It doesn't have to be that big, I guess, but whatever, we'll put a big screen TV in here. And then there's other things you can do, just like let's see, maybe we'll do I like to use the stool sometimes as a kind of a bedside table. Do a couch, maybe we'll do a corner couch over here. And let's see, what else? Something cool, maybe we'll put a little sofa this way. And it's really unfortunate that they don't just bring back the legacy parts, because I don't really love these technology room floors. Obviously you could use any room you want. You could use the industrial rooms or whatever you want to do, but I do think these are the most generic rooms you could have. Another cool idea I had was you could take this, pull it, put a window on it, and then, yeah, right here. So you can take these drapes. I'll move this couch for now. Take these drapes here, kind of have it here. Just want to center it up as good as I can. You have to kind of point it at the floor, because it does like kind of sit on the floor as a part. So now you have these drapes that are kind of like over the window. And so, you know, in your head canon, you can just close those windows at night or whatever. And I'll do it again with another window, just because, for the sake of uniformity. And I actually want to go into the menu and select it again, so I'm kind of looking at it dead on instead of having to reorient it. We'll do that. And then can we color those or no? Okay, they're just going to be black. And then I don't really like the corner sofa. I'll do this one instead. I'll put one right up here against the thing, just for some extra flavor. And I'll make it black because that looks cool. So now you have a little bedroom, and you've got these windows that kind of look out into the rest of the room. Just kind of a cool idea for an indoor concept. I think what I might do is build the kitchen area off of that. Do something like this. Maybe you could just leave it open. That's entirely possible. I'm not going to go crazy with this, to be honest with you, but you know, you kind of get the idea. You could section these things off. Some ideas that I do have for kitchens, I like to use things like the worktop, and you can kind of put like a tap on it or something like that. Where's the vintage tap? Take something like this, maybe just throw that on there for like sort of a sink. Another thing I like to use is this tall cabinet for a refrigerator. So I guess like if I want to put it on this wall here. I can kind of like split the difference, do something like this, so that it looks like it kind of has two doors, like a refrigerator. So that's something to think about. Yeah, there's a number of cool things you can do with kitchens. I also like to use the counters. We'll throw one down real quick, kind of put that here, and then they kind of connect to each other, which is nice. Maybe hook it around like a bar. So you can have those. You can also have little tables. Yeah, just play around with that kind of stuff. Build yourself a little kitchen. And then obviously, like, I would probably do like a living room out here. And again, I would use like the TV, probably put the TV like on this wall. So we'll take this billboard, turn it, kind of level it out, blow it up, and you can almost make it as big as the wall. I guess you pretty much can. Color it. There's a giant TV right there. And then you can build things around it. We'll say let's do like a little corner sofa there. Build another one. Some nice things you could use are, I like to do the planters. Kind of put that in the middle. You can also use like bio crates or something like that. Those are kind of nice. Just to kind of liven things up a little bit. But what I would probably do is put one up against the wall here like this. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but you know, you get the idea. Just some cool things that you can do with the interior of these personal quarters. Again, you could do another separate room over here and do like a little lab or an office with a little desk. All that kind of stuff can be built in there. Just general decorating tips in this one. And then another thing I was really thinking about doing too is like a little archway over here, which I don't really know what I could use. Maybe the frame. It would just kind of be a little entrance way between these couple areas. Kind of a cool little break spot there. Yeah, I don't mind that. Just like a little archway. Another kind of cool side lesson right here is if you are underneath your platforms, one thing that I really like to use is these round lights, and I'm sure I can't find them, these ceiling lights right here. What's kind of cool about them is they kind of fit underneath the rafters, so you can kind of tuck them away, but they do provide light underneath these platform areas. So just kind of a cool decorating tip. I tend to use this a lot, actually. And maybe I can tuck that one in there. I don't know. So usually I'm more precise with that kind of stuff. I would take a little more time, but it is really a cool tip just to have that. So think about things like that. Places that you can stick lighting, extra lighting. I like to use the pill lights sometimes too, just for extra kind of atmospheric vibe. You can put things like that. So that really does help to like add to the overall aesthetic of your freighter base. All right, I've got a bonus lesson for you real quick. I'm standing on the deck, the command deck. So before I even get into my actual freighter base, a real cool tip that was pointed out to me a couple times. I actually didn't know this for a long time, but you can actually build outside of where your freighter base begins. As long as you're inside this doorway here, you can still bring up the build menu. And that's kind of cool because you can build teleporters or, you know, whatever. One thing I really like is building a teleporter here. And then it kind of can send me to somewhere like my, you know, private quarters or whatever, captain's quarters or something like that, just for quick access. It's really kind of a nice thing. But another thing that's even cooler is you can come up here and you can build up here as well. And it depends on where you're standing. So like obviously if I'm standing here, I can still get it, but like if you go a little farther, you can't pull it up. So you have to be within a certain range of that doorway. So, you know, you can just throw a couple things up here. Maybe if you want a little couch for this little NPC guy, you can give him one. You can give him a little worktop. But it's kind of a cool little tip that I didn't know about for a while, but I now have probably too much stuff on my main save hanging out outside of the actual base. I think what I did with this is I put it in a different spot so it's not as obstructive. I think what I did was I kind of snuck it like this as far back as I could to the point where it still functions, but it's also like kind of out of the way of the doorway. So just something to think about when you want to build, you know, right at your entrance. Just another kind of functionality tip. This kind of allows you to go places real quickly without even having to go through your freighter base doorway. So that's generally how you would do a courtyard. And you can do a lot of things from here. And I think probably you can tell where you'd want to go from here. Obviously you don't need to go up with it. You don't have to, you know, be vertical with it. But what I like to do is build all the way around it with buildings around the sides. And then I go up above and build second floors. But we've already got quite a few main buildings here. So just use your creativity. Decide what you want to do with this main courtyard here. And yeah, at this point you definitely know a good chunk of what should get you built on most of your freighter base. I think there's probably some other things that I'll put in like a bonus lesson or something like that, but you definitely with this are gonna have a real good start on you know, building a base. I think the main part is planning it out, deciding what you want certain rooms to look like, deciding what you want buildings to look like, deciding where you want each building to be. Do you want it to go all the way out and around and surround you and then go vertical with it? Do you want it to just be just vertical, kind of like this? And I don't mind this kind of idea. It's kind of claustrophobic, but not really, because it's still kind of open air. But you could build all of your buildings vertically and just have a really tall couple of skyscrapers like this. There's just a number of ways you can do it. So I really hope this course kind of helped you out. Obviously, you can go into the comments and ask me whatever you want to ask me, and I'll make a video if it's important enough that I feel like I need to cover it. So I really appreciate you sticking around. Please show me some of your bases. Best of luck. Happy building. I'll see you soon.